Let me start with you, Helen. You have just come straight from the meeting. What were some of the hottest topics there today and the priorities for the leaders attending the meeting?
I think the big topic today was actually the background theme, which was the US withdrawal, or the announcement by President Trump of the intention to take the USA out of the Paris Agreement. And it was really the background music, and everyone came today wondering whether that was going to dominate things, whether people were really going to be looking in a very depressed way at what was going on. And actually what came out was a lot of positivity. Everyone was really engaged, everyone was really actually quite upbeat, saying that there are other ways to tackle this. We don't necessarily need the US government, partly because so much in the USA is happening at the state level. We've seen big announcements from California, from New York, Washington State, all big economies in their own right, saying we're going to do this anyway, we're still in the agreement, and we actually want to come here and work with China. And so some of the announcements coming out today are about China and California cooperation.
Before we head on with our discussion, the definition of clean energy, of course, expands and evolves over time. And for the average person, for most of our viewers probably, they've heard of wind, they've heard of solar. Just help us understand a little bit better what constitutes clean energy at this point.
So when we're talking about clean energy, we're thinking mainly about carbon emissions, but also about other pollutants that fossil fuels emit. And so clean energy and renewable energy are very similar terms. Wind and solar are the ones that people have heard of, partly because they're the most economically viable at the moment. There's lots of research, there's lots of innovation going on, particularly here in China. People are looking at other energy sources. But the big breakthrough in the last few years has been around the price of those technologies, in particular solar, driven by China actually putting a lot of effort into manufacturing, which has brought the price down, and that's allowed people around the world to start seeing solar as very competitive with fossil fuels, which means that we can clean up both reducing the carbon emissions and also the pollution that affects our health.
Dr. Clark, the Clean Energy Ministerial is being held in China for the very first time, and Helen just touched upon it. It was opened shortly after the US's withdrawal from the Paris Accord. And do you think that hangs on the minds of the leaders attending?
Well, I think basically the issue is that, as was just mentioned by Helen, that the fact is the United States may have withdrawn, but there are a number of American states, including California, where I am now, and also our governor, who's in China as we speak this week, perhaps probably for that conference. So there's actually a lot of things going on that are really much opposed to the current, what's his name, the guy who's the President of the United States, what's his name? Oh yeah, Trump. And so I think what you're going to see is, since California is the 7th or 6th largest economy in the world, we're going to be very active and continuing to be active with the world programs and the UN issues that were coming up from Paris. And to be clear, by the way, I think one of the things that we have talked about here in California for the last few decades, I've been very involved in it, particularly as I was the renewable energy advisor to the governor of California at the turn of the 21st century, is that it's not a matter of being clean, because there are people who use the word clean and also with coal. That's called in English an oxymoron, two words of the opposite. So what you have to do is talk about green energy. And that's very much a topic that your current president in China has been saying by green development. Those are right on the same areas, and as Helen would say, from what I can tell as her voice sounds like she's from the UK, we would say in America, that's called being spot on. That's directly the kind of thing that we have to do, and we have to do that as a world. And you're going to see a lot of changes that are already happening. And let me just add to the definition of what green energy is. It's also geothermal. It's also combining wind with solar, because they're intermittent powers. They're not always providing energy either in your homes or to complexes or into communities. So you also have to look at hydroelectric power, which we have known for many decades has provided energy, or what we call now the run of the river. There are technologies where when the river is flowing, it's generating power, and that provides you with ongoing system and generation. You've got to look at also the possibility of ocean power and wave power. And then in addition to all of that, the technologies that are going to store this power. But above all, green energy, green development does not include nuclear power. The fact of the matter is, and I used to work at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in Northern California, is nuclear power is a problem because there's no way to control or keep the waste under control.
All right, Dr. Clark, let me ask you this. How divided do you think the U.S. stance or the U.S. position is on clean energy because we have the withdrawal by the Trump administration from that Paris Accord, that landmark Paris Accord. But just as you said, things are happening on the state level. A lot of support there from state leaders, a lot of support there from the corporate world. Just how divided is that position right now on clean energy and the related climate issues?
How much time have we got? I mean, have we got a couple of hours? Because let me be very clear. I'm a member of the United Nations. I was started to join the UN in the 1990s, the UN IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I was also the first director for the UN's research on the when they formed the Framework Convention for Climate Change. And the fact of the matter is, today I'm now involved with the UN on what they call the G20 and now the B20 Task Force on Finance and Infrastructure. I'm on that board. And the reason I mention that is because we are going to continue working on these issues whether Trump has anything to do with it or not. And by the way, Trump may not be around for long. The clock is ticking. I won't even go into that. But the fact of the matter is, our economy in America is very much going green and has been for the last decade, and it will continue to do so. So we want to see jobs created. We want to see reduction of pollution in the environment and water and other areas. And I call it today, by the way, forget about global warming and climate change. It's called climate preservation. That's what we have to do, and we have to also know what it costs, how we finance it, and where those resources come from. And by the way, it doesn't all come from the private sector. It's got to come from government.
All right. Now, let me turn back to Helen here in our Beijing studio.
I could go on. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. Thank you for your insight. We're just trying to get more questions asked in our very limited time here. Helen, your organization held a side event at the meeting, which is called Under to Clean Energy Forum, and you worked as a moderator to discuss how to achieve the triple benefits of clean air, decarbonization, and economic development. You've also had discussion with the governor of the state of California, Jerry Brown, and other speakers. Share with us some of those conclusions.
Yeah, so the Under 2 Clean Energy Forum was bringing together the Under 2 coalition, which was actually something that Governor Brown started. He initiated actually with a state in Germany prior to Paris, which brings together now 170 jurisdictions from around the world who've signed up, a lot of subnational governments, also some cities, we have some countries that endorse it. So they've signed up to commit to under 2 tons of emissions. And really what we're seeing there is leadership at the subnational level, states, regions. We had the Vice Governor of Sichuan province on the stage with him. And what was coming out of that meeting was really showing how broad these commitments are, and also that's now the time for action. So Governor Brown spoke from the stage, and there was a real call to action from him. He was really sort of galvanizing the crowd and asking everyone to really step up to the plate. Also telling them that it's not easy. I think we've heard just there how much work there is to do, but helping people see there is an economic opportunity. We had states there. We had KwaZulu-Natal, which is a new state, signed up today from South Africa. Completely different economy to California, but seeing them at lunchtime, talking to one another and seeing what they can learn from each other, that's really what the Under 2 is about. People around the world working together and governments looking at one another, learning from one another, sharing policy, so not everyone is having to do this from scratch.
Also, Helen, China plans to spend more than $360 billion by 2020 on renewable power sources. And it should create more than 13 million jobs in the renewable energy sector. How do you view the Chinese commitment when it comes to clean energy?
I think this has been exciting people in the climate community for a long time. This isn't just a reaction to President Trump's announcement last week. There's been a lot of press about it in the last week, but actually it started last year with the new 5-year plan that was announced last March, where you see this huge investment. And I think we're seeing these 2 levels. So one is this big investment in innovation and seeing that as the future of the economy. And the other we've been seeing for a while is this investment in manufacturing that we talked about before, which is bringing the price down. So I think everyone's very excited about what China is doing in this area, and seeing some specific things coming out today of China and California saying we're going to lead this together. It's very exciting to see.
Dr. Clark, investment-wise, China's efforts have been very visible. I want to get your take on what China has been doing well with promoting clean energy and what it has been not doing so satisfactorily.
Well, you know, again, it's green energy, and it's because it's more than clean. Let's put it that way. I mean, people are well aware today that the diesel source for fuel for cars coming from Germany was incorrect, if not fraudulent, information and statistics that was done in the 1990s. And I actually witnessed and saw some of that then. But the fact of the matter is, when you talk about green energy, you're talking about a very different kind of source. That source has got to be something that also can be measured and combined with other sources. In other words, when you've got, solar during the, the day, and you have wind mostly at night, and you combine those two, you integrate those systems, and you're making those systems integrated not only with energy, but with water, with transportation, and with waste. And that's the thing that we have to be doing, is looking at the economics of all of this. It's one of the reasons I refer to myself as a qualitative economist, because I want to know the answers to questions, including the definitions of words like green or even clean. And the reason I say that is because if we're not on the same page, we have to realize that even in the translation aspects of it, we've got to be, and we've got to work together. That gets to what I would call, if you will, the economics. The economics
Dr.
of this
Clark,
is
I'm
not
so sorry to
some of
cut
the
you
things
off,
that
but
are
that
coming
is
from
all the
West.
time we have today for this topic. Thank you so much for your insight, Helen Clarkson, CEO of the Climate Group, and Dr. Woodrow Clark, Managing Director of Clark Strategic Partners. Thank you for your time.